I'm Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I have the last two blocks in the Broken Star Quilt to show you the quilting designs I chose for them. And this first block is the free trade block, and I am starting this block by quilting the background first. Normally I will quilt a block from the center out. For some reason this one I chose to do the background. Now the thread is Fad by Signature, and it is a variegated thread with multiple colors in it. It has greens and blues, yellows, oranges, purples. So it has lots of different colors in it, and it really shows up well on the black fabric. And actually it shows up well on any solid fabrics that you have. On these prints that I have in this quilt, it doesn't show up as well, but I used it in there anyway. Now the background designs I'm using are ones that I've used in several of the other blocks in this quilt. It's straight line quilting, and I'm using my Handy Quilter scalloped edge ruler for helping me to guide the machine. And here I'm just clipping my thread tails so that I don't run over them somewhere down the line. So this quilt is almost a king size. It's I guess it would be considered a queen size. It's pretty large, and it was a pretty complex quilt to put together, but it was something that I enjoyed doing. It was pretty fun, and the pattern is from 2010, and I got this at my local quilt shop. It was a Saturday sampler quilt, and I don't believe they have that pattern anymore. I haven't been to the shop to ask them about that, but I know a couple people have asked me about this pattern, and I have referred them to the quilt shop. It is Specialty Quilts in Jefferson City, and you can reach them at specialtyquilts.com, and you can ask them about this pattern if you're interested in it. And I'm about halfway done with the background here. The fabrics are by Moda, and I don't think this line is out anymore, because this is such an old design. I mean, it's 8 years old, and you know how quilt fabrics go. They run for a short time, and then they come out with new fabrics. So the fabrics aren't available for very long before they're just out of stock, and they don't reprint them. So, but any bright fabrics will work on a design like this, and it's just a Broken Star quilt is what it is. So if you can find a pattern for a Broken Star quilt, then you've got the pattern for this quilt, and you can use any size, any kind of blocks in these sections that have the piece blocks in it, any blocks that you want. They don't have to necessarily be these exact same blocks. Now the machine is in stitch regulated mode, and that's the mode that I use for quilting with rulers. It helps prevent me from making mistakes as far as hitting the ruler with the hopping foot and breaking a needle or chipping the ruler. When I first started quilting, I didn't have a stitch regulator, so I learned how to use the ruler without it, but I have rulers that have big chunks out of them because I have hit the edge of the ruler with my hopping foot, and it just breaks a chunk out of your ruler, so it's not something I want to do on my new rulers. So the rulers are still usable. I just have to avoid those chipped areas, or use the opposite edge and use those. The bobbin thread, I mentioned in the last video, is a solid color teal. It's 100% cotton. It's also by Signature, and I just choose a thread that will blend with one of the colors in the variegated thread, and as long as the backing is not something that I'm considering when I'm choosing my threads. If it's like if I had a customer quilt and they wanted something to match the backing, then I would choose the thread color for that. This one has a a pretty busy backing, so and it's a dark blue and black, so the teal color blends in really well, and the quilting isn't that noticeable. The thread isn't that noticeable in the back. You get the texture, but you're not seeing the thread like you do on the solid colors in the front of this quilt. Now for the star points, for most of the star points I did just do a continuous curve, and that's what I'm doing in this star. Some of them I did do different design work, but I'm just doing a continuous curve here. So this goes really fast, and the depth of the curve is completely up to you. Sometimes I'll do a pretty deep curve, and sometimes I just want to do a little shallow curve. On this one, it's kind of medium. It's not real shallow and it's not real deep. It's just kind of a medium depth of a curve. Now for the center of the block, I'm doing a stitch or cross hatch. Now when I get to this section where I have the square is made up of 2 triangles, I stitch in the ditch along that seam and then just go around the square here. So I'm treating this center of the block as one piece. And now I'm going to ditch over and get to that corner and then do the quilting line through the center of the block from one diagonal to the other, from one corner to the other. And then stitch in the ditch to the next corner and do the same thing. So this block doesn't have a lot of heavy quilting in it. It's just a moderate amount of quilting. And right now I'm just quilting all the way around the block just to help kind of tack that down. Another thing I could have done instead of stitching in the ditch would be to do the continuous curve all the way around those star points. So doing the continuous curve also on the base of those star points would also have been an option. But on this block I chose to stitch in the ditch. And so that quilting is done. And I'll move the machine out of the way here so you can get a better view of the completed block. And there I have brushed off the chalk. There was some chalk on that quilt. I brushed it off, and there you can see it completed. Now the next block is similar to I think 2 other blocks that are in the quilt. This design is called Sarah's Choice. I don't know what difference it makes because these blocks all look the same to me, but they have different names. I don't know if it's where the dark and the light colors of the star points are placed. I think that's probably what makes a difference. But this one I'm doing across canoes in the corner squares, and in the triangles I'm doing that little petal design. And I'm just going all the way around. This is another time I chose to do the background of the block before I did the center, which isn't my normal. I'm not sure why I'm doing it here. I completed this quilt about 2 months ago, so I don't remember why I chose to do this, especially after the disaster with one block when I started on the outer edge, and I just had to keep ripping out the quilting because I just couldn't get it right, but I'm not sure. Either way, it doesn't really matter, whatever works best for you. For me, usually I start in the center of the block and work my way out. And these 2 blocks, for some reason, I decided to start on the edge and work my way in. But you can see these 2 designs, they go pretty well together and they flow well together when you're quilting them. So I don't have to stop and start to get these 2 designs quilted in. Just have to slow down to pick up my ruler and use it when I'm stitching in the ditch. Now here I'm in the center of the block. I'm doing this little leaf type feather design that I did in 2 of the other blocks, and this one starts in the center and you quilt your way to the tips of the star, and then just go back down to the center and then do the next star point. So you swing out in an arc, and then you make a little arc perpendicular to that, and then you swing back to your beginning point with another arc. So they're just C curves. That's all these are. They're just setting as far as that little arc on the end is just positioned a little bit different. So, and here this is another place where you have a lot of seams coming together in the center of your block, and sometimes your hopping foot will get stuck on those, and you just have to kind of ease it out so that you can keep on quilting. But this design, it goes pretty fast, and it gives you a lot of impact, especially in solid color fabrics. Now these fabrics both have prints in them, so they're not solid, but with the variegated thread, hopefully that will show up just a little bit more. And you can see that actually a little bit better if you're up close to the quilt. And the designs are flowing together, they meet. So each star point, they're going in the opposite direction. And that means all of those red star points, the feathers, point in one direction, and then in the lighter color fabric, they point in the opposite direction. So it helps give that design a little bit of motion. So this one, I'm just going to continue around the quilt, around the block, and I'll show you the completed design. So here's the completed block, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a few tips on some quilting designs for your star blocks. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my newest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.